Rain hammered the windows of Rosewood Diner like fists demanding entry. The storm had rolled in from the east just after sunset, turning the gravel parking lot into a mirror of dark sky and flickering neon. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed their eternal hymn above cracked vinyl booths and a counter that had absorbed 40 years of spilled coffee and whispered secrets. It was 10 minutes past 9 on a Thursday night when the convoy arrived. 6 black vehicles, sleek and impossibly clean, their headlights cutting through the downpour like searchlights hunting for something precious and lost. They moved in formation, precise as a military operation, parking in a semicircle that transformed the humble diner into the center of some unspoken universe. The other waitresses, 3 women who'd worked these floors long enough to know every customer's order before they sat down, pressed their faces against the glass, breath fogging the windows as they watched. Behind the counter, Emma Torres stood frozen. Her phone glowed in her trembling hand, the screen still showing the message she'd sent 12 minutes earlier. A message meant for her old friend, Rachel. A message about desperation and charity funds and the surgery her 6-year-old daughter needed before winter ended. A message sent to a number 1 digit wrong, landing instead in the private inbox of someone she'd never met, never imagined meeting, someone who existed in a world so far from hers they might as well have lived on different planets. The lead vehicle's door opened. A man emerged, and even through the rain-streaked glass, his presence rewrote the diner's shabby reality. Charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, now darkening with rainwater. Tall, composed, moving with the certainty of someone who'd spent his life making decisions that shifted markets and changed destinies. But his face carried something unexpected. Not anger, not the cold assessment of wealth evaluating poverty. Something searching, something almost vulnerable. Marcus Chen crossed the parking lot without rushing, letting the rain soak through his clothes as if weather were beneath his concern. He carried a piece of paper in one hand, protected in a plastic sleeve. In his other hand, something small glinted silver, even in the storm's gray light. The diner's door chimed as he entered. Water dripped from his coat onto the faded linoleum, each drop loud in the sudden silence. Even the old refrigerator's hum seemed to hold its breath. His eyes scanned the room. Past Dale, the manager, who stood holding a coffee pot like a weapon. Past the waitresses clustered by the window. Past the 2 truckers in the corner booth who'd stopped mid-bite. Until they found Emma. She looked like someone trying to disappear into her own uniform. The white polyester hung 2 sizes too large, stained with ketchup and exhaustion. Her dark hair, dyed a shade too black, pulled back in a ponytail that revealed the tension in her jaw. 29 years old, and already wearing the invisible armor of women who'd learned that being noticed often meant being hurt. Marcus lifted the paper, his voice cutting through the silence with unexpected gentleness. The words he read aloud were Emma's own, sent into the void of a wrong number at the moment hope had finally run dry. A confession about trying to be good, about wondering if goodness counted for anything when the world seemed designed to punish it. Emma's knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter's edge, knuckles white against the formica. Dale stepped forward, protective instinct overriding his confusion, but Marcus raised his hand. Not commanding, pleading, asking for patience, for trust. For one moment before judgment fell. He reached into his coat and withdrew the silver locket, holding it up to the light. The old metal caught the fluorescent glow, and Emma's breath stopped. Everything stopped. The rain, the buzzing lights, the rotation of the earth itself seemed to pause as she stared at an object she'd only seen in photographs, in stories her mother told on quiet nights when they'd had nothing but each other and the memories of better times. But that recognition was only the beginning of a story that had started 23 years earlier, in another storm, with another desperate moment, and a little boy who never forgot. The bus stop sat on the edge of Chicago's Chinatown, where the city's promise met its cold reality. January wind cut through thin coats and thinner hope, the kind of cold that burned lungs and numbed fingers and made 7-year-old boys wonder if their mothers had forgotten them entirely. Young Marcus Chen stood alone, oversized backpack weighing down shoulders too small for its burden, watching every passing car with eyes that tried not to cry. His first day at the new school across town had ended hours ago, the school where they spoke English too fast, and looked at him like he was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be known. His mother was supposed to meet him at 3:30. It was nearly 5, and the winter sun had already surrendered to darkness. A young woman sat down on the bench beside him, early 20s, tired in the way that came from working multiple jobs and sleeping too little, a waitress uniform visible beneath her thin jacket. She noticed the boys shivering, the way he checked the street every 30 seconds, the practiced stillness of a child trying not to be a burden. She had $6 in her wallet, the last 6 until Friday's paycheck that would barely cover rent. But she stood, walked to the corner cart, and returned with hot chocolate. She didn't ask questions or demand explanations or make him feel small for being alone. She simply sat with him, her presence a shield against the wind and the fear, until his mother arrived an hour later with frantic apologies in broken English about the double shift that had run over, about the bus that never came, about the supervisor who threatened to fire her if she left early. The young woman smiled, waving off the crumpled bills Marcus's mother tried to press into her hand. "Someone did the same for me once," she said, and the words carried the weight of a philosophy passed down through generations of women who survived by sharing what little they had. As she walked away, something fell from her coat pocket, landing soundlessly in the snow. Young Marcus saw it, a silver locket, catching the streetlight's glow. He scooped it up and ran after her, but she'd already turned the corner, disappeared into the city's anonymous crowds. Inside the locket, a tiny photograph of a baby girl, and an inscription worn nearly smooth by time and touch. His mother tucked the locket into her purse, promised they would find the kind woman someday, return what was lost. But someday stretched into years, and years into decades, and the locket remained, a debt unpaid, a kindness unreturned. That same winter, in a different city, 6-year-old Emma Rodriguez watched her father pack his bags with the efficient detachment of a man who'd already left weeks ago in every way that mattered. Her mother, Sophia, stood in the doorway, trying to hold on to dignity while being abandoned, trying to show her daughter that women could survive men who mistook them for temporary. He left an envelope, $300 and a note, claiming they were better off without him, as if his absence were a gift rather than a theft. Sophia worked 3 jobs after that, raised Emma alone, taught her that kindness didn't cost money, that it cost courage instead, that the measure of a person wasn't their bank account, but their behavior when no one was watching, when there was no reward except the quiet knowledge that they'd chosen right over easy. Sophia died when Emma was 19. Sudden illness, no insurance, buried under debt that transferred to her daughter like an inheritance of struggle. Emma inherited her mother's locket, though she'd never seen the original, lost years before her birth, and her mother's philosophy. She became a waitress like Sophia had been, quiet, hard-working, invisible by design and then by necessity. She met Travis Bennett when she was 24. He was charming in the way that dangerous men often are, successful in ways that seemed legitimate until you looked closer, attentive in the manner of predators who'd learned that patience yielded better prey. They married quickly. She got pregnant, though the child wasn't his, a fact she'd been honest about from a previous relationship that had ended without bitterness. Travis had said it didn't matter. Travis had lied. The mask came off slowly, then all at once. Travis wasn't a legitimate pharmaceutical sales director. He was laundering money through fake prescription networks, using his territory as a cover for operations that stretched across state lines. When Emma found the documents, when she understood what she'd married into, he made the threat clear: stay silent or lose everything. Her daughter, her freedom, her life. She fled during her 8th month of pregnancy, drove until her car broke down in Rosewood, a town small enough to disappear in. She gave birth in a hospital 2 counties over, registered her daughter under her new name, Torres instead of Rodriguez, paid cash, and vanished into the anonymous rhythm of small-town survival. 3 years she'd managed to stay hidden. 3 years working at this diner, keeping her head down, speaking only when necessary, saving every dollar for Lily's heart condition that worsened with each passing season. 3 years of looking over her shoulder, of jumping at every black sedan, of teaching her daughter that silence was safety. Until tonight, when exhaustion and desperation had overwhelmed caution, when she'd meant to text her old friend about a charity fund and instead sent her soul's confession to a wrong number, to Marcus Chen's private line, to the little boy who'd grown into a billionaire, but never forgot the woman who'd bought him hot chocolate with her last $6. Marcus entered the diner holding the printout of her message and the locket she'd never seen but somehow recognized in her bones. The other waitresses whispered, their voices carrying judgment wrapped in curiosity. One of them, Brenda, spoke loud enough for everyone to hear, suggesting scams, manipulation, the convenient timing of desperate women and wealthy men. Dale, the manager, watched with uncertainty, creeping across his weathered face. He'd always liked Emma, protected her privacy when strangers asked questions, but now doubt bloomed. She'd been so secretive. What if this was some elaborate con? What if he'd been played for 3 years? Emma didn't defend herself with words. She simply stared at the locket, tears carving tracks through the exhaustion on her face. "That was my mother's," she whispered, voice breaking on the past tense. "She lost it the winter before I was born. She looked for it for years." Marcus held it closer, showing the inscription now magnified and restored by experts who'd spent months working to reveal what time had tried to erase. For Sophia, love outlives loss. M.R. 1986. Maria Rodriguez, Emma breathed. My grandmother. She gave this to my mom before she died. The story unfolded between them like a bridge built from coincidence and fate. Marcus's mother had kept the locket safe for 2 decades, made her son promise to find the kind woman and thank her properly. When his mother passed 5 years ago, that promise became an obsession. Marcus had built a global empire, commanded resources that could move mountains, but couldn't fulfill one simple wish. Until tonight, when Emma's accidental text had given him the final piece of a 23-year puzzle. But then, Emma's phone buzzed. Her face drained of color so completely, she looked like a ghost of herself. Before Marcus could ask, before anyone could process what was happening, a black sedan, different from Marcus's Convoy, predatory in its stillness, pulled into the parking lot. Travis Bennett entered the diner, wearing his charm like expensive cologne. Handsome in the way magazine advertisements promised success, smiling with teeth too perfect to be trustworthy, moving with the confidence of men who'd never been told no in ways that mattered. He called Emma baby, claimed she'd had everyone worried sick, played the concerned husband with the skill of an actor who'd rehearsed this role in mirrors. Dale knew him. They'd gone to high school together, shared beer and baseball scores, and the comfortable camaraderie of men who'd grown up in the same small world. Travis had been here months ago, asking about Emma, offering a reward for information. Dale had lied then, said he didn't know her. But now, watching the scene unfold, doubt transformed into something uglier. Brenda whispered to another waitress, vindication dripping from every syllable. I knew something was off. Travis produced paperwork with the flourish of a magician, revealing the trick. Custody filings, Emma's supposed history of instability, medical records suggesting she was unfit to raise a child. The diner staff began to turn, their sympathy curdling into suspicion. Even Dale wavered, his protective instinct warring with the evidence of official documents and the testimony of an old friend. Marcus made a phone call, his voice low and controlled, requesting legal teams and background checks. But Travis was already winning. He'd spent years perfecting this performance, knowing that wealth and confidence could rewrite reality in real time. Then Emma spoke. Her voice shook, but didn't break, each word a small act of defiance against the silence that had protected and imprisoned her for 3 years. She told the truth about meeting Travis, about discovering his money laundering operation, about the threats that forced her to flee, about giving birth alone and afraid, about changing her name and her hair and every identifying detail to keep her daughter safe from a man who viewed children as leverage rather than miracles. Marcus's lawyers arrived with the speed of helicopters evacuating a war zone. But Marcus did something unexpected. He turned to Emma and asked a simple question. "Do you trust me?" She nodded, terrified and desperate, and clinging to the slim hope that kindness might exist in forms larger than hot chocolate on frozen mornings. Marcus faced Travis with the calm of someone who'd spent decades learning that real power didn't need to shout. His team projected documents onto a laptop screen, visible to everyone in the diner, transforming the shabby restaurant into a courtroom where truth served as judge and jury. Bank records showing Travis's laundering scheme. Police reports Emma had filed and withdrawn after threats. Hospital records documenting her treatment for falls that weren't accidents. And the final piece, DNA evidence proving Travis wasn't Lily's biological father, that his custody claims were fabrications built on lies and forged documents. Travis's mask shattered. He lunged for Emma, and in that moment of rage, screamed the confession he'd meant to keep buried, that Emma was a witness to his crimes, that she knew what he'd done, that she could destroy him if she ever found the courage to speak. The diner's security camera had been recording everything, live streaming to the local police frequency, a system Dale had installed after a robbery last year. Sirens approached, growing louder like judgment arriving in waves of sound and light. Emma stood, holding the locket that had traveled 23 years to reach this moment. She looked at Travis without fear for the first time since she'd met him, and her words carried the weight of her mother's philosophy. "You tried to make me believe I was nothing, but my mother taught me. Kindness is evidence of character, and character is evidence of truth." Police entered. Federal agents followed. They weren't here for Emma. They were here for Travis, whose pharmaceutical scheme had been under investigation for months, who'd just handed them their star witness along with a recorded confession. As he was led away in handcuffs, his charm dissolving into panic and rage, the diner erupted in whispers that shifted from judgment to shame. The thunder was gone, but its echo remained in every heart that had witnessed what happened when kindness outlasted cruelty, when patience outlasted power, when truth finally found its voice in a wrong-number text message sent at exactly the right time. Marcus sat across from Emma in the now quiet diner, rain still falling but softly now, the storm's rage spent. He slid an envelope across the counter, and inside, Emma found more than money. Full payment for Lily's heart surgery, a college fund that would give her daughter choices Emma never had, legal retainer to help her rebuild her identity safely and permanently. "This isn't charity," Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of a promise kept across decades. "This is a 23-year-old debt being paid." The television above the counter showed breaking news. Travis Bennett arrested, pharmaceutical network exposed, charges including fraud, extortion, and witness intimidation. His wealth was frozen, his reputation destroyed, his freedom transformed into years measured in prison walls and regret. The man who'd used power to abuse the powerless now faced the system he'd corrupted. Dale approached Emma with shame written across his face, apologizing for his doubt, for his wavering, for almost abandoning her when she needed protection most. Brenda remained silent, guilt visible in how she couldn't meet Emma's eyes. But Emma didn't gloat or demand penance. She simply said that people believe what they see, and she'd been hiding, and maybe that was a failure of trust on both sides. Emma tried to return the locket to Marcus, claiming it should stay in his family, that it had fulfilled its purpose, but he closed her hand around it, insisting it had already completed its journey, bringing two families full circle across 23 years of separation and searching. It belonged with Sophia's daughter now, he said, belonged with the next generation of women who understood that love outlived loss. Emma's neighbor brought Lily to the diner, a 6-year-old with dark curls and eyes that held her mother's resilience and her grandmother's kindness. The little girl ran to Emma, and Marcus knelt to her level, introducing himself as someone who'd been helped by her grandmother once, someone who hoped to be a friend to their family now. Lily handed him a drawing she'd made, stick figures showing a woman holding a cup and a boy smiling, innocent art capturing the essence of a moment that had echoed across decades. "Mommy told me about Grandma," she said with the wisdom children sometimes carry. She said kindness is magic. Marcus's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "She was right," he whispered. The diner staff gathered, their earlier suspicion transformed into protection. A fundraiser jar appeared on the counter. Dale offered Emma the manager position with better hours and benefits. The community that had almost turned on her now rallied to ensure she'd never have to run again. From storm to stillness, a new chapter began, not written by wealth or power, but by the quiet truth that love, once given freely, never truly disappeared. 6 months later, in a small backyard Emma now rented with income stable enough to dream beyond survival, Lily recovered from her surgery, laughing with the abandon of children who'd been given their futures back. The locket hung around Emma's neck, catching sunlight that seemed warmer than it had any right to be. Marcus's foundation expanded, renamed the Sofia Rodriguez Fund, dedicated to helping single mothers escape domestic violence and access medical care. The paperwork bore Sophia's photograph, the same baby picture from the locket, now enlarged and honored. Rosewood Diner thrived under new management and old values, its sign replaced with words that carried weight. Rosewood Community Kitchen. Where kindness comes home. 3 betrayals had been meant to destroy Emma, her father's abandonment, her community's doubt, and her husband's cruelty. But 3 truths saved her: her mother's kindness, her own courage, and the memory of strangers who witnessed good and chose to honor it. Betrayal announces itself with threats and documents, and the crash of broken trust. But kindness works in whispers, in hot chocolate on cold mornings, in lockets kept safe for decades, in text messages sent to wrong numbers that turn out to be exactly right. We cannot control who abandons us, who doubts us, or who tries to destroy us. But we can control what we leave behind in the moments we have with strangers. Sofia Rodriguez left warmth on a winter evening 23 years ago. Her daughter left hope in a message sent during her darkest hour. And Marcus Chen left proof that debts of kindness compound over time until they can save a life, redeem a promise, and prove that the universe sometimes keeps better accounts than we dare believe. Morning light streamed through the diner's windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny proof of grace. Emma wiped down the counter, the locket glinting against her uniform, while Lily drew pictures in a corner booth, her laughter the sound of futures rewritten and promises kept. Somewhere beyond sight and time and the limitations of what we can measure, Sophia was smiling too. Because kindness had outlived loss, just as her mother had promised, just as the inscription said, just as the story proved, one hot chocolate and 23 years at a time. The rain had stopped, the storm had passed, and in its wake, something better than sunshine emerged. The quiet, persistent truth that goodness, however small, however forgotten, always counts for something. Always counts for everything.